Joining me now on DIRTRACKR Conversations, Ryan Krikke. Ryan, I guess let's start with your family's sprint car team. It's been a very difficult year, obviously, across the world, and normally you guys would be out traveling. Your driver, Kerry Madsen, would have been probably kicking ass at this point, but things very different this year. You guys decided to kind of scale back and run locally, obviously with some of the issues down there as well. But give me an idea about the kind of decision-making process that you guys went through when you realized that you weren't going to have Kerry Madsen in your car for the schedule this season.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me on. It's a real privilege to get a message from you from the other side of the world. From obviously the US is where all the sprint car racing happens, and to get kind of the message and the recognition to want to have me on your show is a real privilege. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
To answer the question. Kerry was actually here last year in March when it all sort of started to unfold, or late February, and he kind of said then, "I'm glad I'm going home now. I'll probably, if it's another month or so, I might not get back into the US." And at that point, I was kind of dismissive of it, but he's actually right into current affairs, and he's quite an intelligent guy. And when he said that, I sort of stood up and sort of took notice, and then. Yeah, just had to kind of watch it play out. Initially, when it all sort of happened, I could see the economy was going to suffer greatly. So I actually said to the guy who runs our team, I said to him back in March or April, like, go and buy every tyre you can get. Let's order the parts now. I don't know. I wasn't sure how the businesses were going to survive cash flow wise. So I was like, let's get what we can now, so that we've got it in August, September, October, when we need to start getting serious about going forward. Let's get that stuff now. Who knows what businesses in the country are going to have the parts we need, where the US dollar was going to be at. So it probably started as early as March, really. So we did what we could with parts. We got a bunch of stuff on order, and then obviously all the borders went up. So we had to start thinking about what we do going forward. Had Matty Cochran, our crew chief, the guy who runs the race car team, for me. I kept him on full time. He kept sort of saying, look, do you want me to go and do some other work? Do you want me to do this, do that? And I was like, no, let's just keep moving forward with it. I never wanted to kind of take that side step or a step back, because once you start to do that, you almost start to concede, and then it's too easy just to kind of let it fall away. So that's sort of that was kind of midwinter for us, sort of that June, July period. Then I could see that getting Kerry back here was going to be really tough, and I really had to wait on the decision from the World Series to see what they were going to do going forward. Obviously, that's what we've done for the last 20 years, and that's kind of what we kind of base our whole schedule around is the World Series. Once they made the announcement, and prior to that, I'd already had some pretty lengthy conversations with Matt and kind of kept in touch with Kerry. And once they made the decision not to run the World Series, I kind of had the plan B, which was to put Dane Kingshot in the car. I kind of had that sort of in the back of my mind anyway. I think, if you're not prepared for the worst, you're not prepared at all. So I was kind of prepared for the worst, and we'd already sort of started gearing up for that. So once the World Series couldn't happen, a few more conversations with Kerry, and I really wanted to start racing. Ordinarily with Kerry, we wouldn't start racing till December, but if we were going to be stuck in WA, Western Australia all season, that I wanted to race for the points here. So we had to be right by opening night, which was like 2 months earlier than what we would normally race. So so once World Series made the decision, there was a lot to be done, a lot of conversations to be had, and we just had to get together what we could get together, engage Dane, and be there for opening night to make sure we got every point we can. And now, obviously, the way things are, we're committed to Western Australia, and we'll race for the points here and see where we end up in April when it all finishes up. Yeah.
The U.S. fans that obviously pay attention to what's going on down there, they're going to be able to watch your car and have been able to watch your car race at Perth live on Dirt Vision. And with Dane, obviously a guy that comes from what you call speed cars, what we call midgets, giving him his opportunity to kind of jump in a sprint car. And I know you guys as a family have sponsored him in the past with your family businesses, but give me an idea about what kind of driver he is and why he was the easy choice to put in the car for this season.
Yeah, we've had a really long relationship with his family. His dad used to help us on like the family race team years and years ago before we kind of took it on the road and whatnot. And I've sort of been watching Dane and have supported Dane and sponsored Dane right from junior sedans, which is like a thing that a 12-year-old kid does over here, and like your little family run around sedan. Watching go through the ranks into speed cars. We've got two car dealerships, the Toyota dealership and the Subaru dealership. And the Subaru dealership has sponsored him really from day one in the speed car. So I've had a really close eye on him for a long time, and he's been a really good friend of the family. When it came time to make that decision about who to put in it, and it's kind of like not typically what we would do, sort of give somebody a crack, and I'm really all for that, but typically we go after a professional that can win us that World Series, but obviously we had to rejig our thinking this year. So yeah, it was quite an easy choice really. He's a local guy, he lives here in the same town. I know he can do it, the talent he's got, and when you see him in a midget, he's just really silky, makes really good decisions. His family team, with all respect, was quite low budget, so he knows how to look after stuff. So yeah, it was a big decision, but an obvious one and quite an easy one to make really. And it's been great fun so far. His results are building. He's getting more and more comfortable. We've kind of figured something out now with the car that I think goes in his favour. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Speed Week, Boxing Day.
When you guys are racing at Perth, obviously Perth is like what, an hour and a half up the road from where you guys are in Bunbury. And then, but if this was a normal season running World Series, how different does that look? How much traveling is there with World Series and on a schedule basis, how different is this season versus what you would normally run?
Yeah, it's like couldn't get any further apart, I suppose. I guess, the World Series is like a really tight, condensed version of the Outlaws, I guess. It goes for 2 months. When we start racing, we race 6 nights in 7 days. So we start with a speed week. And then there's like 20 hours of travel from Warrnambool to Brisbane. And there's just so much travel involved. Australia is such a big country that we don't just, like your next track, when we have to go from state to state, your next track is not, 4 or 6 hours away. It's like 20 hours. So there's so many overnight hauls. So yeah, the travel on the guys is really brutal. And there's no real gap in the schedule for any, like a week long, weekend to weekend. We don't have that week long gap in the schedule to kind of regroup and go back to the shop, because our shop is clear the other side of the country. It's more or less in California, and we do most of the racing in Pennsylvania to kind of put it in some sort of perspective. So there's no opportunity just to go back to the shop, reload and go again. So yeah, the logistics of getting stuff around the country is pretty tough, especially if you happen to hurt a motor or a car. We're really fortunate. A good friend of mine, Owen Keller, who owns Transport Equipment Hire, is one of our major sponsors. He's in Melbourne, which is kind of like a middle point to that east coast, if you like. So we ship some stuff over to him, and we leave some stuff in his shed over there. And if we happen to hurt a car, or we've gone through a few wings, we have some stuff with him. So that's that's a big help when that if we do get in that situation. From my point of view, pretty much in summer I would fly every weekend, and like I say, it's like flying from LA to Pittsburgh or whatever it's going to be. It's like every flight's 4 hours, 5 hours. I try and do it first thing on a Friday morning, so we'll drive to Perth, spend the Thursday night in a hotel by the airport, take the early morning flight, get to wherever I'm going by midday or 2, then more or less go straight to the track, spend a couple of nights, 2 or 3 nights with the guys at the races, then fly back first thing Monday. or Sunday, and in the office the next day. So it's that for those 2 months for that sort of stuff every weekend or thereabouts, it becomes pretty grueling. So to go from that to what we're doing now, it's almost like we're barely racing at all, because it's kind of, we drive up to the track, race, and we do race in Perth and stuff, and WA with the World Series. So it's kind of like the back end of that schedule, but not having that pressure or chasing those points. And by the time the World Series comes back to Western Australia, the points are pretty well kind of set. So, you're well aware of where you need to be each night and who needs to be where and where you need to be in comparison to them. So it's, when we come back here, it's more of a high pressure situation. Whereas at the moment, it's just kind of, it's actually pretty cruisy. Yeah, the guy that's running the team, Matty, he's like, what do you want me to do this week? We don't race for a whole, like, I've got next weekend off, do you mind if I take a day off to go skiing or whatever? And I was like, yeah, mate, whatever. Like, we got plenty of time. So, but he's done a lot of work on the truck and trailer and the shop and that sort of stuff. So it's nice to have that time to do other stuff instead of just, jam everything in the trailer and you go on for sort of 2.5 or 3 months, whatever it is. Yeah.
You guys, even with a new driver, have had some pretty good results so far. I think you guys have had 3 races, and the last time out here on December 5th, finished second, and a hell of a finish there on that last night. But what, even with having a young guy, what are your actual expectations of what Dane can do this season?
It's good to see you. Obviously, obviously tune in and watch every race. That's pretty cool. It's hard to know who sort of has interest in it and who doesn't. Yeah, well, that was the big thing. Like, I know the car carries a certain amount of expectation, and we kind of really do our bit with social media and the appearance of the car and the team and the truck and the trailer and stuff. So I kind of get that it brings a certain level of expectation, and that was a conversation I had with Dane really early. Like, mate, there is no expectation in this. Let's just we need someone that's going to keep the car up front or thereabouts, and I don't want everything torn up in the first 3 nights. And I just kind of tried to back all that out of it for him. He's going to put enough expectation on himself, so I just kind of tried to kind of remove all that and just bring it back to a real fun, let's just go to the races, and mate, if we're 5th, we're 5th, if we're 10th, we're 10th. I don't want you to take a 10th place car and try and make it 5th and wreck everything on the way through. So, yeah, my expectation was kind of about where we are now, I suppose, but I kind of probably would have expected to be there at the end of the year. I kind of thought that we would have started with, a few top 10s, and then kind of like in the new year, they would turn into top 5s, they turn into sort of top 3s by the end of the year. And if we can win one, then, I'd be stoked. But to come out and have the car speed that we've got, particularly early in the night, qualifying has been really, really good with that. And obviously the feature races, and he hadn't raced any up until our opening night. He hadn't raced anything since February this year, so he was out of the chair for a long time, and that was a midget. He hasn't done anything in a sprint car forever. So the way he's got in it, and really kind of just getting that communication and that feel back to the crew chief has been outstanding so far. Him and Matty, the crew chief, is they're best mates, and Matty was the crew chief on his midget, so that kind of makes that relationship a lot easier, which is key. But he's the way he's going at the moment, his feedback, the way he kind of handles the car and what he does with it, and the way he moves it around, I'm wrapped, and I can see a win coming sooner than later. Probably should have won that last race. We're right thereabouts. I think if we were another 3 or 4 nights in, we probably would have won. It probably could have been a little bit harder on the leader, but I don't want him to do that at this point in time. As it was, the leader was harder on him, which is fair to go and win the race. So that's cool. He's giving us plenty to shout about so far.
Yeah, definitely. For the people that are actually watching this, you are wearing your Krikke Motorsport polo that has the 40-year logo on it, which I believe was from last year. So your family's race team has certainly been around a long time. And I certainly want to talk about the, kind of the history, because, even if fans here in the US don't know your team specifically, they will certainly know a number of the drivers you guys have had over the years, and will know kind of the origin story of your team, because your dad, way back in the day, bought his first car from Bob Trostle, who is obviously a sprint car legend in the United States. But, kind of run me through, the short history of Krikke Motorsports, and and you know, how it got started, and all of the, you know, all of the things you guys have done up to this point.
Yeah, it's a pretty long story, I guess. Short version, yeah. The Americans used to come out and race here in Western Australia back like you know, sort of mid to late 70s. And I was born 76, so this is like my very earliest memories. They would, and Dad used to sponsor the speedway, and he kind of knew the promoter and would like supply push trucks and that sort of thing back in the day. When the Americans would come down to race in Bunbury, they used to use the wash bay at the back of this dealership, at the back of the Toyota dealership, and use the workshop. And you know, back in those days, they were just big, heavy, dirty, greasy, oily sort of cars, and so was the workshop. So it was all cool. But anyway, yeah, Dad got to know Bob Trostle and some of these guys that would come out with him. I remember having Christmas Day, having Jack Hewitt, Tim Green, and Rick Unger, I think, around for Christmas lunch, like as a kid. So this is, you know, a long time ago. Anyway, I guess it came time when they were going to box them up and send them home, or whatever they did with them. And Dad said, well, let's not do that. Maybe I'll just buy one. So he, you know, I don't even know the amount. It was like $4 or $6 grand or whatever. Bought it, and then he had to get someone to race it. Dad used to actually race speedway back in the day, kind of like sedans, you know, sort of bush bashing these things at the speedway locally here years ago. But his brother Ron, his younger brother Ron, said, well, you know, I think I could probably race this thing. He'd never raced anything, but he's like, I could probably race this thing. So they took it out the track here on a few different weekends and got some laps up, and then he started racing and kind of took to it pretty quickly, became quite handy. Went on to win two national titles, one in 85 and one in 91. He went on to race for Jeff Kendrick, where he finished his career and was super successful there. Another big team here in WA. From there, my uncle, Dad's other brother John, stepped in and raced. He won, I think, a couple of state titles. Speed Week, he was pretty handy. He went on to race for someone else. Then my brother raced it, and then later in his career, he got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So that sort of took him out of the chair. And at that point, I did a stint in the US in '96 with Jack Ottenschild. Spent 6 months over there on the Outlaws with him. So I kind of got to know a lot of the guys over there, and got to know Shots, Donnie, a little bit. And then Donnie came out here and raced for a couple of these upcoming Speed Week rounds. And anyway, when my brother got sick in '99 with cancer, we sort of made the decision to kind of build the team up a little bit, employ a full-time mechanic, and we'll take it on the road. So so that's kind of how it got started into what it is now. So Shots was kind of the first guy to come out and do the World Series in our first year, as myself and Keith Giles and Donnie on the road. We had no idea what we were doing. We had a little Mitsubishi dual cab Pantech thing with like a little box on the back. We had like one spare wing and 3 spare nose wings and 1 spare motor that was half as good as the motor that was in the car. And back then, the World Series was like 20 odd rounds, not like 13 or 14 like it is now. Away we went. We went out and won the first 6 nights straight. We're beating Brooke and Skip and whoever, Kerry and Braze and whoever else was on the series back in those days. It was super tough. We just kind of got rolling from there. So he did the first year with us, couldn't commit to the second year, so then we had to make a change from there, which is when Skip Jackson came aboard. Then he made the decision not to come back to Australia to race sort of full time again. So with every kind of driver that was sort of in and out, we sort of had to keep looking. And I actually don't know how many there's been now, but probably 15, 16, I guess. Yeah.
I would imagine, with your dad doing it when he did, and as young as you were, that you and your brother probably grew up at the racetrack. What are your kind of like first memories of being around the team and being around the racetrack?
Yeah, it's so there was 7 years between me and my brother, so he was kind of always hands-on. He was probably 14, 15, 13 when I guess Dad bought the first car. So, he was kind of probably more into it than I was as a kid, and I was kind of like into skateboarding and BMX bikes and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of took me until I don't know, I was probably early teens, 13, 14, to get kind of real interested in it. But the race car was always there. You know, the little shed, that or workshop type thing it was kept in was out the back, and it was all pretty agricultural, really. I guess like they all were back in the day. Yeah, you know, I kind of wasn't allowed to hang around too much as a kid because there was a lot of bad language and beers, getting drunk on the maintenance nights and whatever. And but yeah, then as the speedway, it was always I've kind of never gone to the racetrack without having, I guess, you know, some sort of an invested interest or having a relationship with someone at some point. So yeah, just like everyone, I guess, every kid run around picking up tear-offs and kicking rocks and whatever. And then as I got kind of more into it, it really became super consuming. And like every young guy that's into sprint cars, it's like everything. The only T-shirt you put on is a sprint car T-shirt. The only book you have is an open wheel magazine back in the day or whatever. You know, it's you know, the only thing the only place you want to be on my weekends was spent out the back here with my cousin Daryl and my other cousin Jason, sort of working on the car. And you know, we weren't allowed to do too much too early, but then, you know, so we grew up and matured and got a bit smarter and started to get into it. Yeah.
I think if I saw correctly, you actually worked on the car at various points, did crew stuff, but did you ever drive? Did you ever want to drive? Was that something, you know, that was kind of in your mind?
Yeah, I was always right into the mechanical side of things. I did a couple of stints in the States with Jake Hodenschild, kind of pretty tight with the Hodenschilds. And yeah, it's kind of, I was just starting to get geared up to go and do some racing in the winter of '97. So I was in America in '96, winter of '97, and then in March of that year, I lost two cousins, Jason and Daryl, in a road accident on the way home from what was Claremont Speedway, the old Speedway before the one before Kwinana, or the Perth Motorplex. So that kind of really sort of took the wind out of my sails there. I just kind of lost all interest at that at that point. Then I was kind of getting geared up to go do it again in the winter of whichever year. Then my brother got diagnosed with cancer there that year, so that was kind of like my helper. Like I was going to kind of, the roles are going to be reversed. I was his crew chief at that point, and he was going to kind of, you know, we're going to kind of go and do this together. He was going to sort of help me along and go do it that winter. But yeah, that sort of never eventuated either. So and then the decision came to, what do we do with the team now? You know, he was kind of too crook to race, too sick to race, and then you know, we sort of made the decision. And because I'd never kind of driven, I didn't have that bug, I suppose. As a kid, I did a fair bit of go-kart racing and all that sort of stuff. I was kind of that way inclined, but then the decision came, and I guess for me it was like, don't pursue something that I didn't really know if I was ever going to be any good at, to, you know, being a big hand in putting the team on the road and turning it into what it is now. So yeah, it kind of, it's definitely not I would have loved to have done it. It's not a regret I have. You know, if you look at what we've done with the team ever since then, 21 years or 20 years on the road, to have an integral part of that and to now be kind of managing it. You know, we've enjoyed a lot of success along the way, made a lot of friends, done a lot of travel. It's been really good to us. It's not something that I'll ever look back and regret. I'm sort of happy with that. Never sort of took off, but then the team kind of turned into what it did. If all that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious too now about with you saying that you came to the United States and you know, a couple of times, and you know, how did you get to know the Hodenschields, and how did that work out that you came over to work for them?
Yeah. So I spent some time on the East Coast here with a guy by the name of Mike Rao. Just as a kid, he needed a wrench, and I kind of flew over and helped him for a busy period. As the wheel would turn, we were working at Jamie Veal's dad's place at his workshop in well, it wasn't SWI back then, it was PRC in Warrnambool on this guy's car, and so was Kerry Madsen as well, and he was only a young guy at that time with some other young guys helping him. We heard a car, he heard a car. Anyway, we ended up all working at Veal's old man's workshop, and I kind of got to know Kerry really well, and we became really good friends. So that must have been like 95, I guess. And then anyway, Kerry rang me up one day, and he's like, look, I'm going to I'm going to the US in a couple of months. Why don't you come over with me? And I reckon I can get you a job over there with someone. I said, yeah, shit, that's a good opportunity. So, and working in the family business, I could kind of sort of walk in and out, not really as I wanted, but kind of I had a fair bit of slack there, I guess. So, so Kerry actually, I flew over with Kerry, spent a couple of weeks with Tom Balderson from who's has the Dodge dealership in Zanesville. Spent a couple of weeks with him there. Kerry and I sort of travelled around, went to some all-star races and whatnot, and went to an outlaw race. And Hod's crew chief at the time, Mouse, Daryl Green, I sort of knew him. He's from Adelaide, an Australian. Anyway, I got talking to him. He's like, "What are you doing?" I really need some help here. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what an opportunity!" So I spent the first few weeks or 3 weeks just sleeping in the trailer in the hall and not getting paid. Just kind of last one through the shower, the only one with no clean laundry, whatever. Just did anything I could. Just I don't know, probably mounted and grooved a million tyres as you do as a tyre guy on an outlaw team. So from there I just got to know. I was there for the 6 months. Back then you could only get like a 6-month visa. So I was there for 6 months with Mouse and Hyde, and that was when Sheldon was just like, I like pictures of Sheldon as like this tiny little kid just riding around on a balance bike type thing. So from there I just got to know the Hodenshold's really good. Anyone who knows them knows that they're like, super cool, super decent people. And then I went back in '99 when we were setting our team up. When I flew over with Jolesy, and we went to Shots' shop, and we basically bought a bunch of parts off Shots and boxed them up to send home. And I got talking to Bonsai, who was Hod's crew chief at that point in time. And he's like, "Well, why don't you stay and we'll come back and work for us." So I've had a couple of stints with Hod actually, which is really cool. So it's cool now if I post something on, the race team post something on Instagram or Twitter or something, Sheldon, particularly around car designs and stuff, Sheldon might leave a comment or like it or whatever, which is pretty cool.
Heck yeah. I want to ask about that, that kind of 99, 2000 season with Shots and kind of going from being a family team with your, whether it was your brother or your uncle's driving the car, to now like deciding to be a professional team and bringing somebody like Donnie in. And I know that season you guys won, I think 7 straight World Series rounds. But what was that kind of transition like? And how important was Donnie and the knowledge he had to be able to get you guys kind of going in the right direction?
So this is the funny part. We were like so far from being professional, it was not funny. Half the time we had no idea where we were going. We crashed the truck. First night out, the first round was in Kalgoorlie, which is like 7 or 8 hours from here, and we crashed the truck on the way home and squashed the cab of it. We had to do the whole World Series with a dual cab with a left front door that couldn't open because we had to like weld it shut because we couldn't get it fixed in time. We cooked it. We got the thing that hot one day, going into a roaring headwind, that it's like boiled itself dry and stopped on the side of the road. We like barely made drivers meeting. We got it bogged in some soft sand on the shoulder of the highway. There was like, we'd get to a racetrack, the car would come untied and slip back and knocked all the lights out of the roof, and like it was just we had really good results, and the car was. That was back when there was no weight rule. So we basically bought an outlaw car out here and with a guy like Donnie. And in those days, there were still some good guys going to the US and coming back, but Donnie was already next level then. We just had to give him a half-decent car and he would do the rest. So it's kind of, we were still like these local yokel bloody hooligans that just loaded up their hot rod and turned up. We just happened to be reasonably quick. Donnie was making good decisions on the track. So, we won the first 6. I think it was first 6 straight. Then we had a break for Christmas. Donnie went home, come back, and then it just like went downhill really quickly. We because everything was lightweight, we ended up pulling the eye out of the left side of the front axles. It was like this super thin wall thing, and I don't know, we got a bad batch of fuel somewhere and it wouldn't run. I don't know, went to Parramatta, ran off the edge of the racetrack into the big tyre wall there. We won the first 6 and then didn't win another one until the very last night. Brooke went on to win the series, and he actually missed the night to go to a friend's wedding. So, but kind of, it was Yeah, Donnie spent the whole time in the truck, so he drove across the Nullarbor. We made him drive on there's like this 90-mile straight that has like nothing, not one building, not one bend, not one lamppost, nothing. It's just like a 90-mile piece of road through a desert. We put him in the chair for that, made him drive that. Yeah, like it's we built forged lifelong friendships and relationships out of it. We just had so much fun, and spent time up in the Gold Coast. We went surfing and doing all that sort of stuff. Just race night. We were reasonably good on track. Which if you look back and look at the results, you think, wow, these guys must have been, like super badass and like right across it, but we actually weren't.
You guys, I feel like, have kind of had a who's who even of Australian drivers in your cars between Skip Jackson and Robbie Farr and Jamie Veal. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the seasons with Brooke Tatnall. Obviously, you guys had so much success with Brooke, and Brooke is a guy that's raced over here a bunch as well. But what was that kind of stretch of seasons like, and to be able to win all of the things you were able to win with Brooke?
Yeah, we had a really good combination. The longer you can keep people together, not the easier it gets, but the more sense a lot of stuff makes, I suppose. So we had a really good crew chief, Pete Capon, Shane Finch, who spent a lot of time over in the States. He was our we only had the two mechanics. He wasn't really the tyre guy, but I guess you kind of call it that. It was Pete and Finchy and Brooke. Their relationship was something like I've never seen. The communication between crew chief and driver, and it was a dream gig for Brooke as well. He just knew that he could roll into the racetrack 20 minutes before the drivers meeting, and we were going to be good every night. I don't know, we were just in that purple patch. You see with guys over there, whether it's Donnie one year or Sweet one year, or there's guys here like James has kind of been in that position the last couple of years over here with Buzzy and the Monty Motorsports team. When you get in that space, and the winning culture, or winning kind of breeds winning, and then the momentum, it becomes a really hard thing to stop from another team. We just had a really good run. Had a heap of fun along the way. Just every race we went to, when you roll in and you're going to be super competitive, it's just it just makes life so much easier. And then we just went on a bit of a tear and won. What was it? 5 World Series championships, and it just all happened. Yeah, it was really good. We had good cars. We had Australian-made cool frames that were working really well. So we're working close with John Cooley at Cool Chassis, and the motors were just spot on, and just it was just that era just suited our team and those guys on the road just so perfectly.
Well, when I hosted the Open Red podcast with Ross, we had a few guys on. We had McFadden on, and we had Wade on. But I'm curious from your perspective, especially as somebody who has been in the positions you've been in Australia, but then also have spent at least some time in the United States and out on tour and things like that. What are like the big kind of differences between sprint car racing in the United States and sprint car racing in Australia?
Back then, like when I was spending the time over there, like 96 and 99, I think there was a really big difference, particularly in, truck and trailer and all haulers and resources. I think these days that gap is barely even there at all. Like I believe that our trailer is everything that an outlaw trailer is pretty much. So now I actually don't think the differences are that much. Certainly when those guys, when an American comes down, the amount of racing that they can do for so long at such an intense level gives them that upper edge. But then you see guys like Robbie Farr, who hasn't been to America in probably forever. He's still competitive and can beat Kerry or James or Donnie or these guys on his nights. So I feel like the gaps these days between America and here are really minimal. Everything these days is air freighted out. You can have it within 3 or 4 days. All the parts are the same. Our car that we're running here, which is the same as last year's, we ran with Kerry. That was built at Maxim to his spec. We run the same flat dish wings he runs. Like everything is our race car is everything that an outlaw car is. When Kerry picked him up from the airport last year and took him straight to the shop to get the seat in and whatever else, we got back in the car, went to drop him at his hotel, and he turned to me and he's like, "Mate, that thing is pimp. Like, that's as good a race car as you can possibly build. Like, down from bolts, brakes, componentry, everything is the same, really." So the gap was big once. It's barely there anymore, I think, these days.
I feel like kind of part of the racing culture in Australia is that, at some point, obviously it's not really going to happen this year, but at some point, a bunch of the US drivers come over and take part in racing for at least a few weeks. And I'm curious what the kind of fan reaction is. Like, are they excited to see the American drivers? Are they like, we hope the American drivers get their asses kicked? Like, what is that response like when the American drivers come over?
I think last year was pretty cool when Larson came. Like, Shots is a big name. When he comes, he has his, I guess wherever he goes, he has his fans and his haters or whatever. But I guess the best way to tell is by the amount of shirts you see walking around. I'm pretty big on selling our merch and pushing our stuff. So I kind of like always, I'm never really just staring into the distance. I'm always looking at who's wearing what and, what it looks like and whatever. I don't know. You see a lot of Donny Shot shirts around, especially up in Queensland, in Brisbane, where he comes out and races most. But certainly last year with Larson coming out, that was like at the Warrnambool Fan Appreciation Day. I've never seen a line like there was to get his autograph and buy his stuff. That was pretty big. And I think he had such a bad run, he just couldn't do anything. Right. I feel like everyone was really disappointed by the way that he, had to end his race over here. I genuinely think that people wanted to see him come here and win. So, I think they have their fan favourites. Kerry has a lot of following. That became pretty evident to me pretty quickly, as does Brooke. But certainly, when the Americans come, it builds a lot of excitement, and I think Aussies are almost like happy to see their hero that they only ever see on the internet come out and race and win. I think they've all. I'm guessing most people would have like a local favourite and then an American favourite as well. So
I know that you spend time obviously working on the race team, but then you also work at the dealerships as well. When you are like in the midst of the season, how much time do you kind of get to spend on racing stuff versus your the work that you have to do at the dealerships?
Yeah, it's probably the other way around. It's how much time do I spend doing work rather than the race car stuff. It seems to take priority. But yeah, I mean, I'm really you're only ever as good as your people or the people around you. So I'm like really fortunate that the guys on the race team are right across everything. I've got really good staff at both dealerships, really good managers in every department. So it kind of does certainly free me up and loosen me up a little bit. But yeah, it does become really hard to balance, particularly in February when it's when the stuff comes back here. When I travel, it's kind of like I just say to the guys, right, I'm heading east tomorrow, and then we'll get left alone for those 4 or 5 days, whatever I'm going. Then when I come back, I just try and catch up, but I tend to find myself in doing more race car stuff when I get back to the office anyway. And then and we do a lot of midweek racing, so then no sooner do I get home, I'm kind of like setting up the iPad and dialing into World Series, trying to watch it. And I'll be sitting there. I've got 2 kids as well, so I'll have the 3-year-old and the 8-month-old sitting kind of like at the table, and a partner on the other side, and I'm sort of like at the iPad and I'm trying to have a conversation with her about the day. And I'm really just kind of trying to. All I really want to do is watch the races. So it does become awkward and hard to balance, but. I don't know. It's certainly not an even balance, and I guess when you're as passionate about the race car team as I am, you tend to sort of like leave a few things on the diary that day, work related, to kind of get your race car stuff straightened up. So yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one to answer, and it's hard to prioritize anything. But good thing with work is you can just delegate it, get someone else to do this or that. But the race car team, it's kind of that's a little bit harder than that.
Just a couple more questions. I'll let you go. But where is, the rest of your family right now in terms of the race team? Like, do you still have, uncles, dad, who else is kind of around paying attention and, what does that, kind of full on Krikke family involvement look like?
So yeah, mum and dad are really into it. Dad's 70. But yeah, they're really into it. They barely miss a race. They come away when it's classic week. We rent a house in Warrnambool and we all stay in it. Sometimes there's 10 or 12 people staying in it, which leads to super late nights and too many Crown Royals and whatever. We actually have a curfew. You're not allowed to go to bed before 4:30 a.m. And more often than not, my mum's always the last one to bed. She just absolutely loves it. So they're really right into it. They won't miss a night this year, I don't think. And he kind of doesn't really get into kind of the who's and the whys or the how muches. He kind of knows I've got a good handle on it, and he may query something if the engine bill gets dropped on his desk instead of mine. He'll wander in and sort of say, "Is this right? Like what's this?" But we just kind of straighten him up, and he's all right. Other two uncles I've got that are heavily involved is Ron and John, who do. They were full-time promoting here at the Bunbury Speedway up until a few years ago. Now they just promote the Krikke Boys race, which is typically in Bunbury, end of February, very early March. But this year they've had to shift it. The track had some safety concerns around the fencing, and earlier in the season they weren't sure if they were going to get the tick. Over here, you've got to be licensed, certain level of safety. They weren't sure if it was going to be compliant by March, so they had to make a move and shift the race to have it at the Perth Motorplex in February this year. So they're both, Ron and John are really heavily involved. They get along to the races more often than not. I'm really tight with those guys. Catch up with them most Wednesday nights. The whole Krikke family. Four uncles and two aunties. We all get together on a Thursday morning at 10 a.m. for morning tea for like half an hour, 45 minutes for a coffee and a catch up, which is really cool. So as far as involvement in the sport, mum and dad are really heavily involved and absolutely love it. Dad will pull the race apart at the end of it, and he'll be like, "Oh, what about this and that? And this bloody, slide job, this and that, and bloody checked and whatever." And he loves it. He's right into it. Yeah, Ron and John still really heavily involved in promoting side of things.
Have you allowed yourself, there's still obviously a ton of uncertainty, but have you allowed yourself to kind of think beyond this season and where you go after this? Is it back to World Series and Kerry, or is it, another direction? Have you even thought about that stuff yet?
Yeah, I have. Started thinking about it as soon as Dane got in the car, because I'm really wrapped the way he's going about it. I've actually spoken to Maddie about maybe getting another couple of cars and maybe trying to run two of them out of the shop next year. Maybe have run, because we actually start racing in Perth here quite a bit earlier than the World Series starts. So I kind of see maybe a bit of an opportunity, and you've got to be really careful because the World Series is kind of like the ultimate goal, if you like, to go and win that, which is still my commitment. Is really what I want to go and win. But I'm kind of thinking, do we have enough stuff? Can we get some more stuff to kind of have a car to put Dane in it early through like October through to December? Go on the road for the couple of months and then come back and then put Dane in it. Once Kerry goes back, because Kerry's time with us is really only 3 months or 2.5 months at the most. So I said that there's maybe some windows at the front and the back of the season to keep Dane in it. I'd really like to. We're a long way from the end of the season. Who knows? He might get rid of. He might wreck everything before the end of the year, and then that decision will be a bit easier to make. Let's hope it's not, but. Certainly at this point in time, looking forward, the focus is still around World Series, and at this point in time, I have a commitment to Kerry. I told him, mate, this year's just a gap year for obvious reasons. Next year we'll go after it again. I've already started thinking that, and how do we handle it? Because I don't want to, especially if Dane continues to improve and do such a good job, I don't want to to be just like, you know, a whole year of R&D and good laps for him for nothing, you know. If we go back and do what we want to do, then I really want to see him get a ride in someone else's car. And there's just not many, you know, they're all kind of family owned, or, you know, there's really no rides. You know, it's not like the US where there's a lot of seat swapping going on and whatnot. So I kind of don't want to let him improve so much like he is at the moment and then just go, oh, by the way, you know, mate, you know, it was a 1 year deal, you're out now, Kerry's back in. You know, I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste it. I think he's such a talent, and I think given more laps, he can just continue to improve and be a real contender. So yeah, I don't know. Who knows where the borders and this whole COVID thing's going to be? Maybe next year looks the same as this year. You know, I don't know. Australia's pretty hard on their borders and whatnot, particularly WA, Western Australia. So yeah, it's really hard one to answer yet. Yes, you need to look forward, but it's kind of hard without knowing how it all looks, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I will let you get back to work. I know it's a busy Monday for you, but I certainly appreciate you taking some time to talk, and good luck with the team and the season going forward.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the opportunity to come on the show. It's been a long time listener of Open Red, and now your show that you're doing on your own is really cool. So I appreciate the call up, and everybody have a good, safe Christmas and New Year, and yeah, keep an eye on the W2 over the next few weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.